Well, hello, it's Annette from CDI Lincoln, Clinical Documentation Specialist Services. Have you ever had a moment where you were committed to taking one course of action, and then you kind of have a moment and you step back and you go, I kind of put the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse. So I've actually just done that. So I was actually going to be reviewing a journal article for this video. And then I realized I really should explain or share the method, the process, the framework that I use to read a journal article. So that's what I'm going to do in this video instead. And I'm going to share it with you. Before I do, I just want to mention that there's any number of quality appraisal tools that can be used when reading journal articles, predominantly used in research. So when you're conducting systematic literature reviews, which I have done a couple now, but what I find is they don't actually provide a process on how to read or the process to read the article and kind of make it very systematic in the way in which to approach the article. And so what I have done is I've modified the ISBAR. So if you're not familiar, at least here in Australia, it is a communication tool that is predominantly used for clinical handover or escalation of care. I've also seen it where clinicians have used it to write their clinical notes, and I've also actually seen it in emails, structuring their emails. So what I've done is modified the ISBAR slightly for the purposes of reading a journal article, and I hope you find it of benefit. So if you want to hear more, stick around and I'll give you the detail. So as I mentioned, the ISBAR, and I use this for journal article review, and I consider it my framework, review framework. So ISBAR is 5 letters, ISBAR. I is for introduction, S is for situation, B is for background, A is for assessment, and R is for recommendation. Now I've slightly modified it. So I is actually identification, and the others are all the same, of course. So with I for identification, the sort of questions that I'm wanting to know is, or to answer is, what's the title of the article? Who are the authors? What are their affiliations? Do they appear credible? What journal is this research article published in? Is it a credible journal? What year was it published? Who was the publisher? Again, do they appear credible? Because there are a lot of predatory journals out there, and whilst they may seem credible, they're actually not. And the other thing to look for is, are there any conflicts of interest? Now, with the conflicts of interest, you'll find that further down in the article towards the very bottom, but the rest, of course, is at the beginning of the article. So then we come to S for situation. Now, what I'm looking at here is I'm reading the abstract. You will find, and I've read it and I've heard it a number of times, that it's not recommended to read the abstract when you're reading an article. I disagree, mainly because, as I've said, I've done a couple of systematic literature reviews, and as part of the process, you do your search strategy, you end up with 100+ journal articles, and what you need to do is go through them to see if they meet the inclusion criteria and if, in fact, they need to be excluded. And you do that by looking at the title and looking at the abstract, and then whether they meet it or not, they could be excluded, and it's those that are included, then you do a full text review. So my rationale is, if it's good enough when I'm doing a systematic literature review to read the abstract early on, then it's good enough for me when I'm reading a journal article for interest's sake. So some of the questions I want to know here is, what's the aim of the research? Are the objectives clearly stated? Is it clear what this research is even all about? And does the article relate to your interest? And is it relevant? So it's really taking that helicopter or that bird's eye view of what the paper is all about. And I just find it gives me an understanding before I get too far down into reading the article. The next letter is B for background. So here I'm reading the introduction and the background. Now, each journal sets out how manuscripts are accepted, and some will say have an introduction, some will just have a background, some will have an introduction and a background. So really, what I do is, if there's an introduction, I read the introduction here. If there's a background, I read the background here. If there's an introduction and a background, I read both in order to answer the questions that I'm looking to answer. So here I'm looking at whether there's sufficient detail outlining the background to the problem. So already in the situation, you've kind of identified what the problem might be. So we're trying to find out, is there enough detail that gives me the background or the context to the problem? Has a gap in the literature been clearly identified? And that ties in with the purpose of the research. And are the research questions linked to the problem and gap in literature? So does it all kind of line up is what we're looking for. The next letter is A for assessment. So here I'm looking at the methods and the results. So, and again, because the sections of a paper are sometimes named differently, so it might be results might come under study findings or synthesis. But you'll know that it's actually the results of whatever that research is about. So the questions I'm wanting to know is it documented that there's ethics approval? And are there any study limitations noted? Are the methods clearly explained? And if they're clearly explained, then you're going to understand them. And do the results make sense? Are they written in a way that the reader can understand? And then we'll come to R for recommendation. So here I'm reading the discussion and the conclusion to the article. And I'm wanting to know, does the conclusion clearly explain what the research discovered? Are the results useful in real life and in clinical practice? Are there clearly stated implications for practice? And has the research question been answered? And from here, as you know, when I've done review articles, I always run the CRAP test to determine if the article is trustworthy. And if you're not familiar with what CRAP is, I will link you to a video that explains the CRAP test. And I'll link that in the description and also in the comments section. I've done an infographic as well for the ISBAR so that it's a ready reference for you. And that'll also be in the description, a link to it in the description and a link to it in the comments below. So I hope you found that valuable. It's just one that I've put together and I use as part of my reviewing of a research article. If you find something I'd be keen that you find valuable, I'd be keen to hear, or if you could just message me and or put a comment below, I'd be keen to look at it, because this is just something that I've put together. So that's it for this video. As always, be passionate, be innovative, take care and stay safe. Bye for now.